Then welcome everybody to the IESIS webinar on the IEA SHC Solar Academy Task 65, Solar Cooling for the Sunbelt Regions. I'm very pleased to have everyone here today. My name is Jennifer McIntosh. I'm the Executive Secretary of the International Solar Energy Society. I'm going to give a short introduction before I turn over to our moderator today, Bärbel Epp. And I'm also going to go a bit slow because people are still joining, and we'll have more people joining throughout the live webinar. So the International Solar Energy Society is an international nonprofit organization. We're membership-based and UN accredited, and we were founded, our roots go back to 1954. IESIS represents a diverse membership of academics, researchers, energy practitioners, consultants, students, businesses, and advocates. Our vision is 100% renewable energy for all, used efficiently and wisely. And we work together with other like-minded organizations from countries all around the world to advance the renewable energy transformation. Some of our key activities are, for example, our conferences. We organize 2 major scientific conferences, the IESIS Solar World Congress and the Eurosun, on a biannual rotation. The Solar World Congresses started as an international conference first in 1970. The Eurosuns were started in 1996. These provide both a global and a regional focus for on the conferences themselves, and they our platform for participants from all around the world to discuss topics, a wide range of topics. Our other activities are publications. We publish the Solar Energy Journal, which has been around since 1957, and it has an impact factor of now 7.188. We also added a new journal to our publications portfolio, Solar Energy Advances, which is a fully open access journal. In 2012, IESIS started offering webinars. So we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary this year. They are a key activity for the society, and we offer free webinars on a monthly basis, attracting up to 500 participants. And we are pleased to work with other organizations, for example, IEA Solar Heating and Cooling, as well as REN21, GWNet, and other organizations. On the education initiative side, one of our emphasis is supporting young researchers and emerging professionals and students. So we offer a wide range of initiatives at our conferences, for example, for students to come together and to learn at our events, but also we launched a new initiative called the InCore initiative, which is to bring together students and mentors from around the globe. And finally, knowledge sharing, for example, our infographics. This is a new publication series we started in 2018, where which are aimed to dispel myths about renewable energy and highlighting the importance of potential for solar energy use in creating everyday consumer goods, such as electronics and beverages. And we also launched a museum in 2020 to bring together information on solar history, research and developments over the last 60 years. So IESIS, we invite you to become a member if you're not yet, and please check out our website to learn more about all that we can offer. I'd like to just run through quickly the Q&A session, which will be after the presentations. You are asked to type in your questions, and we will try to answer as many as possible during the live webinar. Please send your questions at any time during the webinar. Please keep your questions short and precise, and write who your question is directed to so that the moderator can assign directly to the corresponding panelist. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Bärbel Epp, who's the founder and managing director of the German consultancy Solrico. She's responsible for the international newsletter of the web portal www.solarthermalworld.org. Which reports exclusively about market and technology trends in the solar heating and cooling sector globally. For 6 years, Bärbel has the SHC chapter author of the annual Global Status Report on Renewables published by REN21. So Bärbel, thank you, and the floor.
Yes, Jenny, thank you very much for the nice introduction. Yes, we have already a long history also with ISIS on these Solar Academy webinars. And it's always a great pleasure to be here, and ISIS is hosting our webinars in a very professional way. So what is the Solar Academy and what is the IEA Solar Heating and Cooling Program? I will give you a brief introduction into this big global organic network, let's say. So the IEA Solar Heating and Cooling Program is a research-oriented collaboration of many experts worldwide. We have 19 member countries, which are colored here in dark red, and we have 8 international organizations, which are sponsors, and you find their countries marked in orange on this map. More than 200 experts grouped together to work on particular solar heating and cooling topics, and we have listed some of them here. It's industrial water management, industrial solar heat, compact thermal energy storage, efficient direct district energy heating systems, solar neighborhoods, solar energy buildings, and solar hot water for 2030. And obviously the task 65, which is solar heating, solar cooling in the Sunbelt regions. So we call these solar projects or solar research project tasks for all of you who are new in this team. What the Solar Academy has to offer you. It's first of all these webinars, which are held quarterly and hosted by ISIS. The next webinar will be on the November 29th and December 1st on solar process heat. So you can always find the new announcements on the ISIS website or the IEA Solar Heating and Cooling website under webinars. We also offer videos from all the previous Solar Academy webinars on the YouTube channel and under videos on the IEA SHC website. And we offer on-site online trainings, which is an important feature of the Solar Academy. So on request of IEA Solar Heating and Cooling member countries or organizations, there you can find that we organize trainings on different topics. And the past trainings have taken place in the Caribbean, in China, South Africa, and the UK. If you want to have further information on our program, please visit the website iea-shc.org, or you can follow us on social media. You find the Twitter contact here and the LinkedIn group. You can also find IEA SHC videos on YouTube, as I mentioned, and all additional questions our secretariat will for sure answer you. Also, a short announcement of the latest publication, Solar Heat Worldwide, from this year. It's our flagship annual solar report. It's the most comprehensive publication with market data and technology data on the wide range of applications for solar heating and cooling. And it's published annually. And this latest report is from June this year. So you're very welcome to check this out also on the website. So this is our short introduction. Now I want to go over to our Solar Academy webinar of the day, Solar Cooling for the Sunbelt Regions, Task 65. And our first speaker today will be Uli Jakob. We have altogether 3 speakers, and Uli will introduce first the Task 65. He is a director of the company Dr. Jakob Energy Research, and he has more than 20 years of industrial and scientific professional experience, particularly in the product development and commercialization of renewable and energy efficiency technologies, and he has a clear focus on solar cooling. He heads this Task 65 since 2 years and is managing director of the Green Chiller Association for Sorption Cooling, which is based in Berlin. So Uli, the floor is yours, and we are looking forward to your introduction into the task.
Yeah, great welcome also from my side, and thanks, Bärbel, for your short introduction. So it's a pleasure to be here today to give you a short insight about solar cooling, especially with the focus on Sunbelt regions. I'm the task manager of this IEA SHC task. And I will give you an insight in the next 5 to 10 minutes what we are talking about, and what the colleagues afterwards will present you in more depth, especially on different topics and work which was already done here in this IEA SHC task. But before that, you probably should get known about our task work within the next few slides. Just to give you an idea about our objectives and scope and why we are looking into this topic. So the scope, as said already in the name of this task, is about Sunbelt regions, so regions where we need affordable, safe, and reliable solar cooling systems, or cooling systems in general. And this IEA SHC task is looking in a deep cooperation with industry, and especially the wording on adaptation, so using existing technologies, either solar thermal, but also PV. So PV cooling is also part of this IEA task, is something which the different experts which are involved in this task are looking into. So this task is, of course, built to previous tasks. I will not go into detail on that, but important for you to know is that the range of capacity, so the cooling capacity, which is provided by the different solutions which are investigated here in that task, are ranging from small scale system, which means 2 kilowatt cooling capacity, which is really small systems like split units, up to 5 megawatts, so large systems, not for a single building, but probably also going into districts or industrial applications. This task is running in total for 4 years, and we are more or less in the midterm now. And if someone is interested in this task, then just to say already here at that site, you are warmly welcome to contact us and to be an expert also here in that task. Now, that's all about the task itself. The question is now why we are talking about solar cooling, especially for Sunbelt regions, and therefore it's maybe interesting to get an idea what are really the challenges, why we are looking into new solutions, why we are looking into adaptation, especially for those regions. So if you have a look on the Future of Cooling report from the IEA, there you can easily identify that the energy needs for space cooling will almost triple between 2060 to 2050, which ends up about 6,000 terawatt hours on electricity demand only for the residential sector in the future to cool our spaces, our buildings. And for that, we have to look for new ideas, for new solutions, which are environmental friendly and hopefully using renewables like PV or solar thermal collectors to run such systems. And the point is that especially countries and regions like India, China, and other emerging economies are the main drivers behind that development. And therefore, those kind of technologies are quite interesting, as we will see also in the next presentations afterwards. And the question now, from our point of view, is what could be the contribution from solar cooling industry, from the solar cooling experts, to be a part of this development, to provide some technologies, which is then at the end helping us to have less electricity consumption in that sector and that kind of application for cooling in residential, but also, of course, industrial sectors. Now, what is the task now focusing with this background, with these challenges? So it's all about innovations, especially on hybrid chillers. You can see one example here on the right-hand side. So it's a combination between conventional compressor chillers and sorption chillers. Those are things, but also hybrid concepts for hot and humid climates, because that's also, of course, closely linked to the Sunbelt regions. And of course, all of those systems, all of those components, there we will have some energy efficiency increasement due to new developments and new controls. And the target is really to reduce the electricity consumption by 75% less than compared to conventional vapor compressor chillers or heat pumps. And that's really a huge stack, because with that we can really significantly reduce CO2 emissions, especially if you think about where the electricity for those chillers, for the conventional chillers, are usually coming from. Probably looking into China, a lot of coal-fired power plants, but also other regions like India as well. So there's a lot to do if we can probably use PV or solar thermal collectors with such systems. And of course, coming from Europe, we have the F-gas regulation, which means the refrigerants inside heat pumps and also chillers have to be replaced in the next years by natural refrigerants, probably like water or ammonia, and others, of course, as well, like propane for heat pumps. And that's also a driver really where we are focusing on to find new solutions, new products at the end to overcome these challenges, which I have mentioned before. Yeah, if someone is interested to get known more about the task itself and all the work which is already done, including deliverables and so on, then of course we have a dedicated website which is linked to the IEA SHC group. And there you can find more information and also the contact details of the different colleagues involved. And maybe someone is interested to join us, as I said before, then you're warmly welcome to send us an email and to get in contact with us. And I hope with this short introduction, I gave you already some insight what we are talking about here today in this webinar. And with that, I just want to hand over now to the colleagues with more details, especially from the different projects where we have now first results, which are now presented the first time also in such a public webinar. And with that, I want to hand over first of all to Bärbel. Thanks.
Thank you, Uli. Yeah, interesting group of people, very interesting topic, very relevant topic, as we learned, with increasing demand for electricity in the future. I have two announcements to make, maybe for orienting our participants. We confirmed that the recording is made available afterwards on the ISS website and on the IEA Solar Heating and Cooling website. This is often a question which was already asked in the chat. And I would like to announce for our participants of the Thursday webinar, which are listening to the recording, that you are very welcome to type in your questions, even during the recording, and we will consider this then in the Q&A section afterwards on Thursday as well. So now this gives me the possibility to present our second speaker, which is Tobias Schmetzer. He is researcher at the Bavarian Center for Applied Energy Research, ZAE, in Germany, in the south of Germany, and is working in the field of geographical information system, heat distribution grids, and chiller heat pump technologies. He studied computer engineering. And within the German research project, Sunbelt Chiller, Tobias is responsible for developing a tool to assess future potential of solar cooling within the Sunbelt region based on geographical data. And exactly about this tool and the outcomes, he will speak now in his presentation. Tobias, we are looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you for the introduction, Bärbel. I don't know if you are able to see my screen already.
No, not yet. Now, yes, exactly. Yes, it works. Perfect.
Great. So, yes, thanks for the introduction. I'm the GIS and tooling engineer in this project. Well, the title, again, analysis of the boundary conditions and potentials for solar cooling systems within the Sunbelt region. Based on geographical data. Geographical data also means geospatial data. Now my presentation is stuck. Here we go. So first I want to introduce the topic by explaining the project's objectives, then describe the kind of data we used, dive into the methodology and data processing, show the boundary conditions, present a showcase example based on a specific solar cooling system, and finally give a summary and an outlook. So to gain a first impression, I tried to visualize the topic using a map with colored climate zones and the Sunbelt area, which this is about. So here you can see the Sunbelt area, and the different colors here are the climate zones according to Köppen-Geiger. Given the many conditions for cooling, it is not easy to get a good picture of cooling needs in the world. What systems are required and where should they be deployed? First, we need to understand what is happening out there. This leads to the analysis and the evaluation of boundary conditions. Like, what are the cooling needs and where are these located? What are the challenges and requirements for recooling systems there? What are the conditions for solar collectors? Where are they located? What is the economic frame and where is it applicable? These questions have been addressed using the data in a geoinformation system. So what data sources do we use? I first want to give an example of geospatial data source. This is a popular and probably well-known example. the solar radiation map is an example of geospatial data source. Most of you may probably know it. The idea is that values of the coordinates of various data sources like this will be processed with each other. Here you can see areas with high solar radiation and areas with low irradiation. Also here, like this is Greater China. So another example could be the baseline water stress, which basically reflects locations of water availability. This information can play a big role for possible uses of wet recooling systems. But I don't want to dive into that specifically now. In this table, you can see an overview of different input sources that we have considered, processed, and included into our global data model. As you can see, they come from different data sources types, which had to be tackled in individual ways. There's raster data sources and vector polygon types, basically, but they had to be tackled in different ways individually. So there's population, there's the settlement model, solar radiation, as you saw beforehand, market risks, the gross domestic products, the baseline water stress, we had the example beforehand. We tried to include things like buildings and also countries. So how do we do this from a technological perspective? We processed the various data and integrated it into our data model using many different algorithms. Most frequently, we used join by location for vector data and sampling techniques for raster data. On the right-hand side, you can see a graphical illustration of what our global data grid looks like. So this vector data and this raster data, we collected it into this data model. This is just a representation of the data model. Data model itself, you cannot see it, it's a model. To be able to do location-specific considerations, we first reflected about what data to research, and then what to select and sample or join. All these were integrated into our data model, which contains around about 145 million data points. So this is just a representation of it. It's not 145 million points. This is less because 145 million data points you would not see. And this is all the data sources we used. As you saw beforehand, it's the same data sources. So what did we do next to find out about the boundary conditions? We filtered the Köppen-Geiger climate classes that reflect the Sunbelt area, and all other values can be considered as a resulting output. So here they put the filter, and here we get the results. The reputational risk index reflects the market risk, and the direct normal irradiance has been classified only for graphical representation into different categories. We visualize the resulting output in these diagrams here. Population can be regarded as a figure for climatization potential. Let's start with the baseline water stress. A large amount of population lives in regions with small water problems, like this area, but many, maybe a quarter, has to deal with high or extremely high water problems. This has an effect on what recooling options are available at the concerned locations. Let's have a look at the direct normal irradiation. Concentrating solar collectors are used for thermal cooling systems, unfold their potential from 1,500 kilowatts per square meter per year onwards in an economic scale. The diagram indicates that roughly half of the population in the Sunbelt could make use of this technology, because this is the area of more than 1,500. The gross domestic product lets us identify where enough purchasing power is available for solar cooling systems and how many people have a standard of living with cooling demand. So how many people, the question is how many people are able to afford the system? Next, we considered industrial areas for cooling, for process cooling. Here again, at the baseline water stress, a large amount of industrial areas distributed in regions with small water problems. But also, as beforehand, again, maybe a quarter remains with high or extremely high water problems. More than half of the industrial area could be used for solar thermal technologies. As you can see here in the direct normal irradiation. And again, the GDP shows where we can identify purchasing power for solar cooling systems. Now I want to give you an example of more specific evaluation on a system which I may quickly introduce to you, the Sunbelt chiller. This Sunbelt chiller is our showcase, or will be our showcase. It is a solar thermal cooling system. It's a thermal-driven chiller, an absorption chiller system. It uses concentrated solar panels as a heat source. It's able to perform in warm regions without a wet cooling tower. That's its strength. It is a heating and a cooling system at the same time. It is suitable for larger buildings. It has been developed and designed in an ongoing corporate research project by the partners of ZAE Bayern and Industrial Solar. For this system, we did an analysis. We filtered for the specifics of this system, the appropriate ranges and values, and finally looked at the resulting figures, which you can see down here at the white area. Our latest achievement in this is this country-specific evaluation. We suspect, for example, that China is so far down here because we would originally expect China to be high up as it has got a lot of industry, but here it's so pretty at a very low rate. We suspect it to be so far down because of its low DNI, as the limit was set to 1,500. And yeah, maybe we would have expected it differently. Then there is, we also did a map representation of this. So here you can see the GDP that is associated with the former filter. And you can see around about 700,000 data points. You can see where in these areas there what is the gross domestic product in these areas. In these diagrams, we wanted to regard the cooling potential in industrial areas. You can see again the different countries and how they are distributed in the world over the different areas. And again, China in this diagram is not on the list, and we would suspect it to be on the list if we would set, for example, the limit a little bit underneath of 1,500. Now, this is the map view of the industrial areas. You can see there's, of course, not as many raster pixels as on the other map, because there's just not as many industrial buildings as there was population. But we can see concentrations here in North America, here in Italy, and also the Arabian or Persian Gulf area. So eventually I want to give you an outlook, what has been achieved. As a summary, boundary conditions for solar cooling systems have been identified and evaluated. Possible locations and potential of a specific solar cooling system have been shown. We spotted the market potentials and risks. The methodology can also be transferred to a wide range of other renewable energy technologies, like heating, electricity supply, or even to completely different fields. What's the outlook? We saw some opportunities for further investigation. There would be a deeper analysis, for example, of industrial areas and population to specifically identify clusters of large buildings and to detect also where would cooling networks make sense. We could include additional data sources like cooling degree days to increase the significance of the results. Also data on energy prices. We could then consider more building types within the industrial buildings, because currently we only considered specifically industrial buildings that were specifically marked as industrial buildings, but there's other buildings that could also be worthwhile considered. And then finally, there could also be a development of interactive maps to make these maps, the interactive maps, accessible to everybody without a tool, and make them representable on the web so that everybody can explore them. That's it from my side. Sorry, that was not the idea here. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Tobias. Good news that this exciting tool will be also available online at a certain time. Interesting. So please type in your questions while we listen to the third speaker, and then we will have the Q&A after this third presentation. I'm happy to present Dr. Daniel Nayer. He has several hats, actually. He works as a consultant and as a researcher in parallel. Daniel is founder and managing director at Nayer Brainworks, a certified consulting office for renewable energy, building services, and energy efficient buildings in Austria. And he's also a senior researcher at the unit for energy efficient buildings in the University of Innsbruck in Austria since 12 years. Within Task 65, he is responsible for the subtask assessment and tools, and he will present results from his assessment and benchmarking of solar thermal cooling systems today. Daniel, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Bärbel, for your introduction. My screen should be visible, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Very good. So here we go with assessment and benchmarking of solar cooling systems. So welcome, good afternoon to all. So what I'm going to present is more what will be the result of Task 65, because we are, as Uli Jakob already told you, we are in the middle of our task, and there is still a lot to do. And there is, of course, room to show you then more results. And now we are basically discussing about the method, or just showing you the base where we are and where our discussion is going?
Sorry, we can't hear you anymore, Daniel.
Okay, so it's back again.
Yes,
So I
yes.
muted myself, sorry. So, so when we are talking about cooling and heating systems, we are aware of that they can be complex. So either they are based on solar thermal systems, they are based on photovoltaic-driven systems, or a mixture in these hybrid systems. The system designs and configurations completely differ, including backups on the hot side, on the cold side, including storages nowadays, of course, with photovoltaic-driven systems, also batteries. Whatever kind of configuration we can think of, it's in there, and we need to compare it. And of course, we're discussing about systems that are built for different demands. So just think about a simple domestic hot water system. It's also solar heating. Of course, if we include space cooling, space heating, district cooling, it's getting more complex. But still, we need to compare it somehow and be aware of what we want to express with our assessment. So either we are talking about a component level, where we are comparing chillers, heat pumps, any boilers, storages, or if we are talking about the system, including the solar-driven component and the backup, or no backup, so including different auxiliaries, pumps, fans, whatever, or if we're talking about the building system, including the heat and cold distribution. So if we are not aware of it, we cannot compare, and we are not able to discuss about the system itself and the advantages of the system, or make a comparison between these different systems and discuss about advantages of the one or the other system under different boundary conditions. So again, there are a lot of different formulas out there to express all the technical, economic, environmental key figures. And even for us experts, it's really difficult to compare it on a fair base. And that's our task, and that's what we want to do, or what we want to support with our tools, to make this comparison on a common base under common and comparable formats, to make the discussion easier for all of us and make this comparison available. So our general objectives in this subtask C, so this is a part of the complete task 65, assessment and tools. It's only dedicated to assessment and tools. So where we are updating emerging useful tools for design and assessment. So of course, there are a lot of different tools out there, what we have established in former tasks, or were established in different associations under different stakeholders and different views. So what we have done till now was searching for them, discussing about the advantages and disadvantages of the tools, and trying to merge all of these. All is not possible, but at least to get the quintessence and make that available in one tool. So what is then necessary as next step? What we are working on is establishing, adapting the assessment method itself and the benchmarking. It's still an open process where we need to go through the discussion, what is the right method? We're going to see one of the methods based on task 53, so former IEA SHC task, which shows one of the possible methods, but still open for any, let's say, changes or any views, because we know if we're talking about solar cooling and heating, and we are talking about, or with different stakeholders, we need to adapt and show the different views as well in our methods. So benchmarking includes, of course, having reference systems that need to be defined. And of course, this is, again, different topic in all the different countries around the Sunbelt. So also this discussion is going on. And as we define this method and the benchmarking, the reference systems, we create a common database for technical, environmental, and economic assessment for the particular countries. With that common database, it will be possible to, let's say, assess under, of course, the same, with the same data, with the same database, but also it provides you then a database to make first estimations based on your country-specific values. And as the task is, of course, collecting results from research projects, but also projects that are realized, we gonna analyze them and benchmark them to show you some of the results of these newly invented or newly installed systems having different renewables and solar sources, or showing different solutions. And in the end, it's also important to show the sensitivity analysis on high influencing parameters. So the question is, what are the high influencing parameters? Because these are the parameters we need to work on to optimize the systems either on technical or economic or environmental side. And it shows us boundaries or overlapping of different configurations and systems if we compare them in one of these common comparable formats. We see then if we change the parameter, let's say investment costs, to a certain point, the system A and system B change accordingly, and system B is then more favorable than system A, for example. But it can also show anything else. So that's our general objectives. And what we, of course, are based on is our former work, including discussions going on in our task 65. So task 53 was finished, or in 2018, something around that. So there we have established an assessment tool in a comparable format that shows energetic, ecological, economic evaluation of the different systems. We call the task 53 E4 assessment tool. It's based on energy balances, which are either measured for realized systems or are based on simulation data, which is under research or under development before establishing. So the important thing is the database for economic, technical and economic assessment is there, and it can be used already. It's free, available on, online on Task 53 homepage. And it will be, of course, updated now in our work. So back to this complexity of system and components. If we are talking about the systems, we need to define the system boundaries, of course. This energy flow chart can be used to show the different components which are included or excluded in the one or the other subsystem analysis. And then we can go ahead with a comparison of different systems. What we see here on the left-hand side in gray is electricity and energy carrier, so traded energy, which need to be paid for. And on the upper side here on the top, we see green, free available energy, sun, air, water, waste heat, whatever is available on a certain location. And on the right-hand side, we see then the different demands which we fulfill with our system. So domestic hot water, space heating, district heating, cooling, district cooling, or now, of course, when we include PV, domestic electricity as well. So, and then inside the boundary of the total system, we see the different components available, PV panels, solar collectors, heat exchangers, bivalent heat sources, bivalent cold sources, storages, and so on, and the different energy flows on thermal side, but also on the electrical side, to show then the auxiliary demands and calculate the efficiencies accordingly. So this is all inside this tool already. So for all of technical and economic analysis, we have this system components available in the list, which shows either investment costs, replacement costs, or say its lifetime span, so to calculate a replacement costs, or efficiency of a reference boiler if you're using a gas boiler or a heat pump as a reference system. So this is already included and gives you a common database to make a comparison on the same format. And then, of course, we reduce the boundary to what we want to compare, probably solar cooling, including hybrid systems, so based on electricity and any energy carrier or solar thermal based. And then we show which of the auxiliaries are included, so they are highlighted there, and which are not included. And then it's getting very transparent what we are doing in our assessment and what you can then expect of the key figures to discuss it with different other, or compare it with different other renewable systems. Our assessment is based on non-renewable primary energy. So we are collecting annual and monthly non-renewable primary energy conversion factors for electricity, natural gas, pellets, whatever is in the list and whatever is used, we're collecting it for the specific country. But we generalize it with a common database then on task 65 to make a comparison under the same values for all. So, but this is not enough. We need to go on monthly base, because we are discussing or often discussing the comparison of PV driven and thermal driven systems, or so then we need to have at least an idea on the influence of hydropower, for example, on the primary energy factor. This is example for Austria's, where you can see a comparison of winter and summer months, and the primary energy factors, just take care of the definition of it, increasing here in summertime, so having more hydropower available. And nowadays also we need to take care of changes in where and when is hydropower available, or when is PV available, and things like that can be shown in such monthly based values. And if we take that into account, we can have a fair discussion between the different systems, including the changes here, and including probably also future scenarios. What happens if anything changes? So on technical key figures, we are calculating here in this tool the non-renewable primary energy ratio, PER, NRE. So it's similar to a ER or SPF. So we calculate useful energy and divide it by needed auxiliaries. So in our case, we don't divide by electricity or values of thermal inputs. We divide it by non-renewable primary energy. So we convert electricity or any other input into non-renewable primary energy equivalents and calculate this PER. Of course, this PER is completely in the different range than comparable EERs or SEERs, so seasonal energy efficiency ratios or things like that. So we need to take care to not confuse our stakeholders, not confuse ourselves. And so we increase or include in the discussion a calculation for the solar heating cooling system, which is quite clear, and include a reference system, which might be country specific and different in the regions, also including different efficiencies and so on, and compare then the non-renewable primary energy and calculate this F-save, so the savings of non-renewable primary energy. And you can see here easily the numbers can get negative. So that would mean if we have a negative value, our specific reference or our specific heating and cooling system is using more non-renewable primary energy than compared to the reference, because of course a reference can nowadays also include any renewable parts. And the best values we can reach is 1. So we would save 100% non-renewable primary energy, which is very theoretical value. You're going to see some examples afterwards, and then we can discuss the value again. And if we are still talking about values F-save, say minus 0.2321, it's still a magnitude that is not comparable to all of what we know from industry, not comparable to a ER or SER or anything else. So we can recalculate it to a SPF equivalent, just converting the PR through the electricity non-renewable primary energy ratio of electricity and having again a SPF, which is now including all the useful energy, heating, cooling, domestic hot water, and whatever, and dividing it through electrical inputs and any thermal input converted into electrical equivalents. So this value is then again comparable to, let's say, more common values. And the magnitude of what we can reach here in solar thermal systems, for example, or hybrid system, is a magnitude between 15 to 25 compared to SERs of what would we say, between 4 to 8, something like that. So this is now not directly comparable, but at least it's a magnitude that we can compare. Still, it's not the fair one, but SPF including system boundary, including all the different auxiliaries, the pumps and so on. SER is only focusing on a component. Just be aware of that when talking about it. Of course, the same game can be driven on economic key figures as well. So we are using NSC method, including some standard values and experiences of our task experts. So we have created a common database to calculate analyzed costs of investment, replacement, residual values, maintenance services, and of course operational costs, which are mainly based on values of the different countries for energy, for water, and so on. And we are calculating this levelized cost of energy for the solar heating and cooling system, and again for the reference system. And we are forming this cost ratio, which is then comparing the analyzed cost of the solar heating and cooling system compared to the reference system. And again, we are getting values between, let's say, worst case 2, so double costs than the reference system, or 0.5, so only half of the costs compared to the reference system. And so we have some nice graphs for showing the base data on. In here, it's investment costs for chillers, depending on their size, on the economic scale, on investment, average investment for European countries. So nowadays we are adapting to Sunbelt, so updating this database accordingly to what we get from our experts. So including these investment costs, including all the running costs and so on, we are then getting towards the life cycle analysis. It's just the same base as we have been using for the NSC method, just showing a diagram over lifetime. In that case, we've chosen 25 years, showing the difference in initial investment, say upfront investment, comparing reference system in gray and solar heating cooling in orange, and summing up the total cost. So initial values, the gradient is showing then the running costs of energy, maintenance, and so on. And of course, if we are using less energy, hopefully less maintenance, the gradient is lower for the solar heating and cooling system. And somewhere we're getting to amortization. And you see the steps inside the life cycle where we do the reinvestment of any component that is that the lifetime is over. And in the end, after 25 years or the lifespan, 20 years, whatever you've been choosing, we then compare again the cost ratio. It's exactly the same value that I've shown you before. And of course, we see there the tremendous change in lifetime of the different components. So if we are comparing any system that needs to be exchanged after 17 or 20 years, all the steps up here, just having a battery system with less component changes, the cost ratio is getting higher and higher, so, or lower and lower. So the savings are getting higher and higher. So we've done this task 53 analysis of 28 configurations showing PV-driven, solar thermal-driven systems for different demands. I don't want to go into these details, but just showing you the graph of the results. And with these two values, cost ratio and savings, non-renewable primary energy savings, we are able to compare the different systems with different reference systems under the same boundary and just easily reflect which are innovative examples that have cost ratios below 1, so savings over lifetime, and at the same time reaching high non-renewable primary energy savings. And that's why we are talking about these two, mainly about these two values, just to show you in the end, a very easy overview comparison between different systems and between different reference systems and so on. And that's where we start with our systems, of course, with all the learnings of former tasks, then introducing the new systems in Task 65, as it was shown before in Sunbelt chillers or any other hybrid system that is coming up currently. And the other important thing is to show then the sensitivity analysis and the influence of the different boundaries. Of course, investment costs, electricity costs, natural gas prices nowadays change quite dramatically. And the effect on it, showing the effect of plus 30% of investment of natural gas price or electricity price, can easily be shown in this diagram in comparison again between the different systems at the same, with the same boundary conditions and so on and so forth. So that's what we're working on. So let me sum up. It's very important to have a common base on comparable systems. So to know the boundary conditions, to know the components which are included in our analysis, to of course know the subsystem details, whether it's built for domestic hot water or cooling only, or any mixture of it, and focus mainly on two figures, non-renewable primary energy and cost ratio, to make this very easy to understand comparison between systems and system configurations. So, and we are currently adapting methods in the database in Task 65, and we will contribute with a comparison of technologies, solar thermal based absorption chiller systems, hybrid systems, PV including vapor compression chiller systems, and so on. We will be able to show you then different results for different profiles, meaning for different demands, public buildings, hospitals, residential buildings, whatever, under the different climates of the Sunbelt regions, and including the sensitivity analysis for the different values then. Well, that's all about the status of adapting assessment methods and tools in Task 65. And that's me. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact us or me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniel. Maybe we leave the presentation with you for a moment, because there are particular questions to some of your slides, so you can go backwards and forwards. That's maybe makes it easier, but we can also invite the others to come on the floor. And we have the Q&A. Thank you very much for all the interesting presentations. So we will start with Daniel because he's still sharing his screen. We had one question when you go back to your page 6, if it's possible. And because there was a question saying that water is listed in green as freely available. However, in many areas, it is either not free or not freely available, or both. It sounds to me like it really belongs on the left with the items which require monetary outlay. How do you address this?
Well, this is a specific issue. Yes, I agree on that totally. If we need to pay for it, water, then we easily can shift it to energy carrier. That's it. So we can, the tool is as flexible as it is. We can simply put water on to be paid for and calculate also water costs. But this is more the view of energy. So let's say not per cubic meter water, but the energy that is available in the ground or water. So, but anyway, it's adaptable, and yes, it's an important issue if we need to pay for it.
Okay. And then go to slide 18. I think it's the one where you marked the orange cloud around the systems which are suitable. And maybe you can give some ideas on what types of systems you can find here. You know, you might know what 9D and 9C and whatever it is.
Yeah. So first of all, today was not the focus on the system itself. So it was more on the method and discussing the base on where we started and where we want to go. So you find all the results of all of the different systems in the Task 53 reports online, first of all. And it's just to give you an idea, it's a completely mix of small scale, large scale systems that are based for cooling only, but also for domestic hot water and cooling. So it's quite a mixture. And it's also interesting to see that it's a mixture of PV driven or solar thermal driven or hybrid systems. So the area we marked there can be reached with almost all of the systems. It's just a matter of the right design for the boundary conditions you are working on. So either it's an office building or a residential building. Just if you adapt your system wisely, you can reach this area.
Okay, so I think it might be good if you share the different links in the chat, you know, the link for the task, for the tool itself, and maybe also for the reports where they were analyzed. So we see your screen still, so I think you can stop sharing now because, so that you can just do it in the chat so everybody will be able to see it. Thank you very much for that. So this was the detailed question regarding his presentation. Now we have the question to Tobias. During your presentation, we were asked, what is the operating cooling temperature range? I think which are the temperatures that can be reached by this Sunbelt chiller system?
I must admit, I'm not the expert for the Sunbelt chiller system. Richard Gurtner is the expert for that system. But as far as I know, it is between 6 and 10 degrees Celsius.
Okay, so for sure, correct for chilling. Okay, good. And then we have the question, maybe Uli Jakob, you can help us with that. What is the latest and best thermal fluid has been developed so far for the thermal solar concentrators?
Yeah, right. For the solar thermal collectors, those systems which are usually involved in solar cooling systems, either pressurized water is used because of the high heating capacity of the fluid itself, or it's direct steam. So those both options are the most which are really used. You also can use, of course, some thermal fluids which are based on oil, but there you have, of course, some other hazards which are not environmental friendly if you have some leakages and so on. So the best from a heating capacity point of view, but also from an environmental point of view, is just pure water. And depending on the different applications, it's either pressurized water or then direct steam generation, especially for industrial applications, the choice where it's usually used, because there also you can run double effect absorption chillers directly then by steam, which also is more interesting, especially from energy efficiency point of view, from the COP of such systems. So those are the things which are used today. And so it's not that a secret, but it's more how to handle the overall system, especially if you have the pressurized side or if you have steam in both ways. You're dealing with high pressures, and that's more thing how to deal with that from a system approach. But that's what usually is done in the projects where we have get known in this task work since 10 years.
Okay, thanks. We also had a more general question on whether somebody can give some more examples on generally Sunbelt chiller systems. So maybe, I think they didn't refer to the Sunbelt chiller as a project, which was this particular one, but more in general. Maybe Jakob, you can sort of comment a bit more what are trends and possibilities of combining technologies.
Yeah, I will do. So with the Sunbelt chiller, which you have seen from Tobias Schmetzer, that's a quite new concept. But of course, there are also others on the market available, tackling especially high ambient temperatures, which you usually find in the Sunbelt countries. And there especially we have the hybrid chiller combination. So the combination between vapor compressor chillers and sorption chillers, either absorption or adsorption. In both ways, the sorption part, which is thermally driven by the solar thermal collector, used to cool down the vapor compressor chiller. So make it possible to get the heat rejection for the compressor chiller at 20-25 degrees Celsius. So if you have high ambient temperatures above 40 degrees and beyond that, then of course the overall efficiency of the system, the EER, is then much better in that combination than if you are only running a conventional compressor chiller. And those hybrid concepts, especially with these combinations, also not only in cascade or serial motors, those are the things where different experts are looking into, and where you also already can find products on the market from small scale to larger scale, which means between 5 kilowatt cooling capacity up to 200 and above. There are products available which you can find, as I said, among the experts and the companies which are involved also here in this task work.
Good, excellent. Thank you very much. Maybe there's a question on this, what you mentioned in your presentation with the F gases, you know, the natural refrigerants. What do you see in this? Is it spreading across Europe, and what are the requirements, particularly in Europe?
Yeah, for Europe, it's just quite easy that with certain targets yearly and then different steps, we have to cut down our refrigerants, which are used so far in conventional heat pumps or compressor chillers. And with that, we have to cut down from the beginning, which means about 80% of the overall refrigerants brought into the market. And that really helps to stimulate to develop new products based on natural refrigerants, either for heat pumps or the conventional compressor chillers, usually with propane, with ammonia, with water, as I said, but also CO2, of course, depending on different applications or the needs on the temperature levels for the different systems. And this is stimulated in different ways, either in the way that we have this regulation, that we have this phase out, which is then somehow leads to regulations, which means that on market, the refrigerants, which are usually used in the past, are not available. And with that, the market prices are rising by 500, 600,000%, which means it will be quite expensive already. And with that, it's also a great push into natural refrigerants because they are much cheaper against the refrigerants used so far in heat pumps and compressor chillers.
Perfect. Thank you for this insight. Tobias, there's somebody who wants to comment on your work and give you some more ideas on what you can look into when you do your assessments. I will read it out for you. Thank you for your work. Possibly questions or thoughts for later. Your map shows concentrating of the Sunbelt in Africa corresponding to the low water access map, but few industrial opportunities there. Did you look at any passive solar cooling technologies, architectural solutions? Do you have data for the variation between days and nights, including irradiance, ambient air temperature, radiant temperature, that means examples black horizon surface, and humidity? Did you quantify how many mechanical cooling systems use that night-day temperature cycle? Pooh. So this is another Sunbelt Chiller project, but maybe you can comment a bit on what you gapped. And I shared the comment also with you on your screen, so you can look into it later.
Yes, thanks for this comment. Most of the ideas are new to me. We looked into some more things, but we did not address these topics specifically. Of course, we know the temperature difference between day and night, but we have not done any research on it. We will consider all these hints, and I will discuss these ideas together with Richard, who is leading this project. Yeah, thanks for the comments, and maybe we'll give you some update at a later point of time.
Perfect. There is an additional question to Uli Jakob, what you said about your refrigerants. It says, following up on the ammonia discussion, ammonia has low environmental impact, but how do you manage the safety risk with using ammonia?
Yeah, it depends what we are talking about. So it's about a small system where you probably can also come down with the amount of ammonia inside the chiller, which is usually not a problem at all. If you are talking about larger systems, then of course you have to take into account the safety issues, which are also regulated in norms and so on. And but that's usually not a problem. No one is taking care about any mini bar which you can find in each hotel where you're sleeping directly beside an ammonia water absorption diffusion chiller. So it's always something how to deal with the issues. It's a safety issue. You have to take care of it, but it's manageable. So with that point of view, it's not really a problem. And the manufacturers also found solutions, especially also for smaller systems, to somehow combine them with a box, which allows you also to set up such systems also inside the building if you take care that you have some air exchange with the outside, and if you have such closed boxes. So those are solutions which are already investigated, which are monitored, and which are market available. But still, it's an issue, and you have to take care of it because of the regulations.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Danielle, again, one of your benchmark questions, we have a question saying whether you have looked into systems providing hot water and cooling, for example, at hospitals, and how they are benchmarked in your assessment, like your slide 68.
Okay, so hospital were not there in task 53. We're gonna see whether we get some examples for hospitals. So if they are there, we will take them into our assessment, and of course give you then the results on it. But it's in general, you could say it's more a ratio between cooling demand and domestic hot water demand. So we can generalize it again. And so in that sense, we have some results of combined domestic hot water and cooling systems in there. So we're going to explore this topic as it comes. So thank you.
Okay. It seems that we have a fair number of participants from Africa But Tobias, in your map, Africa was not really covered. I mean, no colored squares popped up. So what do you recommend, and did you play around with your parameters to see whether there are also solar cooling options for the African countries in general?
So I think I need to emphasize, I mean, the presentation that I did was pretty quick. So I think I need to emphasize that what I showed, the two maps that I showed, were specific for, that was the showcase specific for the Sunbelt chiller system. So this is something that needs to be considered, and means that in that area there's not so much opportunity for the solar for the Sunbelt chiller system. It has to do a lot with the solar radiation that is not that high in this area. Also with the GDP, as the it's a very it's a system that is very expensive, rather expensive. So the business case need to be considered, and also the amount of industrial area and large buildings must be present. So if it's considered for climatization, for residential climatization. So there's a lot of conditions that make it more suitable for rather industrial, but not always, but rather industrial sites. And we, as I said, we set the filter on the solar, on the Sunbelt chiller specific topics. So if we did a map on the more generic parameters, we would see other opportunities for other systems. This was just a showcase. This is what this map is deducted from.
Okay, thank you. Uli, there is a question on reliable producers of solar thermal driven chillers with 2 to 3 kilowatt, very small ones.
Quite small. There are a few on the markets. Reliable is a question, technical reliable or commercial reliable, what else? So there are different directions where this question can go for. So from a technical point of view, there are market available products in that small scale capacity range. There are 3 to 5, which you can find nowadays. The point is, as they are all acting in a niche market, it's sometimes difficult maybe to get a certain amount of those chillers for projects. But that's something which you have, of course, to negotiate with the manufacturers. It's not our part here in this task. But of course, especially with these newcomers and small companies, it's sometimes more difficult than you have an established large company from Southeast Asia, which is dealing with conventional compressor chillers. So there are, of course, differences in this within this question, more technically, but also from a commercial point of view. What could be said is that the systems usually are working for their nominal conditions. So be careful if you take a small-scale chiller developed, for example, for the European market, especially for the European markets like in Germany and Austria and so on. You take that to Southern Europe, then probably it can be already worse from an energy efficiency point of view, as well as the capacity which you get out of this machine. So there you have to be careful, but that's the same, to be honest, for each vapor compressor chiller. So if you take them from the normal conditions wherever they have been tested, and take them to a more interesting climate, like in the Sunbelt regions, then they will also not reach that high numbers which you get usually on the paper of the product brochure printed. So that's something which you probably should take into account for all kind of technologies.
Okay, thank you, Uli. Another question, do you maybe have an estimate, you know, up to which size it's better to do PV electricity cooling with a compression chiller or solar thermal cooling, which is probably also a question of size. Maybe it's a question of the site as well, where you want to install your system. But can you a bit comment on that?
Yeah, so we did a lot of studies, different experts involved in this task, and the picture today, not taking into account the different boundary conditions, which have, of course, changed, including gas prices, electricity prices, especially here in Europe. But if you have get back in the last 2 years, the results from those different studies, there's a clear trend that for small-scale systems, which means up to 2 5-kilowatt cooling capacity, PV cooling is the system which is, from an economical point of view, more or less the best, and it's usually cheaper than conventional-driven vapor compressor chillers, because the prices for the electricity from PV is usually less than from the grid. And for larger systems, which means above 50 kilowatt cooling capacity, depending, of course, also the application, their solar thermal cooling systems are playing a bigger role, because there it's already different for the conventional vapor compressor chillers, and including or combining that with PV. This is not a system. Usually it's 2 different products, maybe installed on the same site, but not seen as a PV cooling installation. So that's a different.
Okay, so 50 kilowatt above is already the sort of cap for that.
That's a threshold,
okay.
Yes.
This is like a threshold, okay. There's another interesting question, Uli, maybe for you. It says, in your case studies, have you been able to notice work on the energy levels of the secondary circuits, less icy water in brackets, to improve the overall production emission yield?
So that's you mean if we have investigated also different fluids to increase the overall solar yield for the systems? Got it right?
Well,
or
the secondary circuits means I think if you use ice, I think on the cooling side to improve your yields. That's how I understand.
Storage that goes into storage probably. Okay.
Yes,
yeah,
probably.
Sure. In all the systems which were investigated by the different experts, usually you have either on the hot side or on the cold side different storages, including also ice storages. If you have a look on the cold side, or slurries and so on. And this is for PV cooling, but also for solar thermal cooling, and it's also investigated. Usually at the end, it's a question of money again. Yeah. So if you somehow introduce more components into the systems, then of course it gets more expensive in general. It's also the same, of course, for a conventional system. With that, of course, you have different magnitudes where you then go with your return of invest of the overall system. But such systems, including storages, were also investigated in the past, and you can find also some hints on that, on the results in the different studies which were published usually by GIZ or by UNDP, where they did a lot of work in the past in that field on green cooling.
Yes, I think now I got another comment on this. What the person meant was whether you have experiences also using less icy water. That means around 18 degrees for the cooling part. And if this increases your emissions or your overall efficiency of your system.
Yeah, sure. If you have higher cold water temperatures, that's what the question goes for at the end. Then, of course, with that, you have an increase of the overall efficiency of your chillers. And that's for both sides, which means vapor compressors as well as for absorption chillers. But for absorption chillers especially, it's more convenient, which means the gain is about plus 5-6% per 1 Kelvin. So if you go from 6 degrees up to 18 degrees, which means 12 Kelvin difference, makes already then probably 50% on efficiency increase for the system itself. Yeah, so that makes a lot. Yeah, so if you go for cold ceilings, other distribution systems at the end, not using fan coils, there you gain already some performance improvements just because you lift the cold water temperature level to a higher point. Yes.
Okay.
And we have experience with that. Yes, of course.
Good. Yeah, well, the last question from one of our participants, maybe before we close the session. He's asking about this 75% target that you set for the reduction of the electricity, whether this is difficult to reach and whether where it comes from, why it was set at 75%, sorry, 75% reduction. Sorry, yes.
Yeah, the point is that's a comparison between thermally driven chillers and conventional compressor chillers. And as thermally driven chillers do not need so much energy, electricity, to run the systems, including also the heat rejection, there you can save a lot of electricity against a conventional system. And with that, you can already reach this 75% reduction against the same system as it is for conventional air conditioning. So there, these numbers are coming from. If you just have a look only on the chiller side, then if you compare COPs, then you can easily reach electrical COPs of these chillers of 200 and more. Yeah. So which is different magnitude again, which is much better than again. But of course, you have to take into account also the heat rejection, which is larger. With that, you reduce again the overall efficiency, but still it's much better than a conventional system.
Good. Thank you. Great. So I think I will hand over to Jenny at this moment and thank all my participants and speakers for the very engaged Q&A, and Jenny for the organization. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
Jenny, we don't hear you.
I double muted myself. Anyways, I wanted to say thank you very much to Uli, Daniel, and Tobias for the excellent presentations, and to you, Bärbel, for the excellent moderation. Just a few reminders to our audience that the recording, as well as the presentations, will be available to all on the ISIS and the IEA SHC Solar Academy homepages soon after this webinar. Remember, as an ISIS benefit to our members, we offer unlimited access to all the ISIS webinars and presentations on our website. And I just want to say thank you for joining us. We welcome your feedback. Please write to publicrelations@isis.org if you have any comments or questions about this or the other events. And we ask you to also please complete the survey, which will be sent to you by email. And your feedback is really valuable to help us improve these events. And also, if you enjoyed this event and you'd like to make a voluntary contribution or donation to ISIS to help us put on ISIS webinars, then we also welcome you to do that. So thank you to our speakers and to our moderator, and we will see you again at another ISIS and IEA SHC webinar soon. Bye, everyone.
Okay.